There have been many great literary books passed down through generations and even taught in schools, most of them being mainly grim and tragic. One of those many books is Hamlet by Shakespeare. Regarded as one of the best interpretations of Aristotle's tragedy, Hamlet is widely used as studying material to introduce the genre. However, another great literary work is Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. In fact, Shakespeare's work is influenced by Sophocles' play and the various 12 elements of tragedy. By analyzing and comparing Oedipus Rex and Hamlet, readers are able to understand Aristotelian tragedy and determine how Oedipus Rex further represents this concept. This will become clear through a detailed analysis and comparison of the following elements. Firstly, the evident struggle between fate and free will throughout both plays. Secondly, the tragic heroes and their various characteristics. And finally, the distinction of the plots as well as their representation of various Aristotelian elements. To begin with, readers can better understand and establish how Oedipus Rex adequately represents an Aristotelian tragedy through the theme of confrontation between fate and free will. Fate is a crucial element in Aristotelian tragedies. It serves as an unresolvable obstacle that cannot be escaped and even instills fear within the reader. In Oedipus Rex, the notion of fate is established early on by the seer, as he states, "Of themselves things will come, even if I breathe no word of them." This attests that no matter the action taken, whatever is destined will take place. Rather than establishing a struggle between fate and free will, the story is overshadowed by ancient Greek beliefs due to their strong faith in inescapable fate. The reader begins to unravel Oedipus's gruesome fate as they discover the chain of events leading him to his current predicament of fulfilling his destiny, which is due to his free will and previous actions. Similarly to being encased in a birdcage, Oedipus is free to do as he wishes within that cage. Conversely, no matter his efforts, he will always remain stuck in the cage. The limits of this cage have been conveyed to the reader. However, Oedipus remains blind and arrogant towards his limitations until the truth is exposed. As if being led by the nose, Oedipus goes out of his way to avoid his fate, which paradoxically tricks him into killing his father and marrying his mother. To the lector, it was clear from the beginning of the story how entrapped Oedipus is and the futility of his endeavor, further proving his encasement and inability of evading his destiny. On the other hand, Hamlet's fate is not as clear and easy to perceive. Hamlet's fate is much more subtle since there is no direct implication that he must take revenge on Claudius, or even suffer such saddening kismet. However, Laertes, a man whose father was murdered just like Hamlet's, informs the readers through the following conversation with Claudius that it is a necessity to get revenge, as if it was part of his destiny. "I'll get revenge for my father's murder. Who's stopping you? Only my free will, nothing else." This passage indicates that the only thing stopping Laertes from exacting revenge is his free will, thus causing him to postpone his fate. Fate here is much less forced, or rather, much less encased and trapping. Fate does not seem to be concretely bound and strict, unlike in Oedipus Rex. This is further demonstrated through the following passage: "To be or not to be, that is the question." This quote demonstrates Hamlet's dilemma since he has to pick and choose between continuing to live in hopes of exerting his revenge or releasing himself from all the pain and simply dying. Finally, another example would be the conversation between Hamlet and Ophelia. Hamlet asks Ophelia, "Are you honest?" After receiving an ambiguous answer, he questions her regarding her father's whereabouts, and when met with lies, he flies into a maddening rage, thus illustrating the leniency of the notion of fate in Hamlet, since if Ophelia had truly answered the question, this would have been pivotal as Hamlet would likely face a different fate and would not have killed Polonius, further demonstrating the variety of options each character has and how it can change the story. The main idea of tragedy is that humans are unable to escape their fate, and out of these two plays, Oedipus Rex was able to better demonstrate this. Any reader would be able to notice this, and also notice the disparity and differences between both representations of fate. Accordingly, Oedipus Rex best honors the genre of Aristotelian tragedy, as it best represents the theme of fate and its despair. Secondly, Oedipus Rex can better represent Aristotle's tragedy compared to Hamlet, thanks to its accurate and spot-on depiction of a tragic hero. The tragic hero is the protagonist of the story, who meets a gruesome fate, often due to a flaw or a mistake rather than an innate evil nature. While reading various tragedies, readers discover the never-ending danger of atavism and its dilemma by utilizing tragic heroes as their examples. Although Oedipus does not revert to a true primate, his loss of civilization and savageness renders him much closer to a primate than to a king. Once known as a king, he is chased out of the country after being known to have slaughtered his father and married his mother. Oedipus Rex ends with the chorus stating, "Behold, Oedipus, he who knew the famous riddle and rose to greatness. His good fortune was the envy of all. See him now, and see how the waves of disaster have swallowed him. Look upon the last day always. Count no mortal happy till he has passed the final limit of his life without calamity." This shows that no matter how great he soared, Oedipus was devoured by disastrous events. The quote demonstrates Oedipus's downfall and serves as a warning to those who wish to anger the gods. After all, this tragic hero's hamartia is caused by his hubris, his arrogance and pridefulness. He blatantly rejects the gods and his predestined fate, and so he must suffer until the end. Oedipus achieves some anagnorisis as he realizes his mistakes and begs Creon to banish him while allowing him to take his daughters with him. Conversely, although his character portrays a tragic hero, Hamlet's hamartia and flaw are much more subtle. One must ponder in the thought before realizing Hamlet's flaw. Hamlet is a smart, cunning man. However, his arrogance and need for equal revenge lead to his downfall. He passed up a great opportunity to exact the revenge he desires, as he thinks to himself, "To take him in the purging of his soul, when he is fit and seasoned for his passage? No! Up, sword, and know thou a more horrid hint, when he is drunk asleep, or in his rage, or in the incestuous pleasure of his bed. Add game, a swearing, or about some act that has no relish of salvation. In it then trip him, that his heels may kick at heaven, and that his soul may be as damned and black as hell, whereto it goes." This demonstrates his desire to exact equal revenge, overwhelming his rationality, as he passes up a perfect chance to slaughter the king. Simply so, Claudius suffers in the depth of hell just like his father. Despite being subtle, this scene demonstrates the prince's flaw and greed. Although present, Hamlet's hubris and flaws are much harder to perceive compared to that of Oedipus. In addition, seeing Oedipus fight his accursed fate is relatable and sentimental to those who have been doomed to live as second-class citizens. Oedipus's struggle brings forth the audience's pity and fear. This fulfills the main goal of a tragedy by evoking and instilling these emotions. Oppositely, although the reader feels a sense of sympathy towards Hamlet, there is no fear evoked. It is harder for the reader to relate and sympathize with Hamlet compared to Oedipus. To conclude, Oedipus's representation of a tragic hero is more fitting to the genre compared to Hamlet's. One more point that needs to be discussed is the overall use of tragic archetypes and elements of tragedy, which is more prominently found in Oedipus Rex compared to Hamlet, rendering it a more accurate presentation of Aristotelian tragedy. For instance, Oedipus Rex's portrayal and usage of tragic archetypes are quite prominent. Oedipus is depicted as the tragic hero, the scapegoat, and the outcast, while the seer is the blind prophet, Apollo is the tyrant, and many more. Many of these archetypes are often found in tragic plays and can be seen as crucial elements to the story, such as the tragic hero. The play also contains all elements of a tragic plot structure, such as the exposition, demonstrated by the following quote. In front of Oedipus's palace in Thebes, to the right is an altar where a priest stands with a crowd of children in sorrowful prayer. Oedipus emerges from the palace door. There's also the inciting incident. A disease is upon the plants of the earth and on the cattle of our fields, as well as the peripeteia, which is depicted by Oedipus's conversation with the messenger in page 8. Furthermore, the anagnorisis, which is depicted by the following quote: "Oh, oh, all brought to pass, all true. Light, may I now look on you for the last time. I, who have been found to be accursed in birth, accursed in wedlock, accursed in shedding of blood." And last but not least, the catastrophe. "And he struck his eyes again and again. With every blow, blood spurted down his cheeks." Throughout the play, elements of catharsis and hubris, as well as signs of motifs, can be found. Contrary to Oedipus Rex, Hamlet does not follow such a traditional structure. The story lacks a proper anagnorisis. Although there are moments to be considered, most of them fall short of enlightening the main character. Although some subtle anagnorisis can be found in Hamlet, there is no evident revelation of recognition of his flaw. However, one could argue that Shakespeare makes up for Hamlet's flaw through its catharsis, which spectacularly releases the reader's pent-up emotions and adds a satisfying conclusion to the play. Nevertheless, Oedipus Rex follows the tragic plot structure without missing a single element, rendering it the more fitting and accurate representation of Aristotelian tragedy. In conclusion, through their analytical abilities, readers are able to determine how Oedipus Rex better represents Aristotelian tragedy compared to Macbeth by virtue to the clash of fate and free will, the characterization of the main characters, and the difference in both plots and their structures. As a final thought, one must not submit to their fate. Rather, they should focus on changing it to their liking. After all, life is not an Aristotelian tragedy. Amy Tan once said, "We dream to give ourselves hope. To stop dreaming, well, that's like saying you can never change your fate. And so we must never stop dreaming and working hard to change our fate and our lives and achieve our goals."